every shout. Tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. Hey, feel the unity, the proud electrified. There under the stadium lights, where legends thrive. Every touchdown we're close to clock west. In Detroit we stand. Give it out there. Rise and grind, Detroit's calling out. Red football dreams in every shout.
All right. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is the Monday after the AFC NFC Championship game this morning. We're going to be talking about all that. We're going to recap what happened this weekend and talk about some Lions news. John Morton getting looked at for offensive coordinator position. Lions hired Calvin Shepard over the weekend. We're going to give a little bit of thought on both of those subjects and a whole lot more, but we've got a guest this morning, someone to be with us throughout the next couple of weeks. And that, of course, is Riley O'Brien. Morning, Riley. How you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm doing very well, Will. Thank you for the warm welcome. Good morning, everybody.
So this weekend, man, I know that we talked a little bit over the weekend about, the kind of the feeling that I want to say a lot of Lions fans had, and I really couldn't stomach myself to watch, but I had to, right? I just had to see what we were missing, and I felt like the Lions needed to be there. I felt we belonged there. I think watching, all four of those teams do what they did this weekend, I think the Lions could have won either one of these games, to be honest with you. I guess, what was your initial thought? And then let's we'll jump into it, kind of recap, both sides there, AFC, NFC.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It was especially watching the start of that Philadelphia-Washington game, I couldn't help but feel like, man, this hurts, because the Lions absolutely should have been there. And I, just like you, and I saw that a lot on Twitter, Rams fans, just about everybody that wasn't there felt like they should have been there. But I do feel like if the Lions had, handled business against Washington, we could be doing this show this morning saying, hey, we are 2 weeks away from New Orleans.
So I'm going to throw a poll up real quick just to get us rolling right away. I mean, I know it's 8:07. We got to get the brains working. So would the Lions have beat any one of the teams this weekend? And that's a quick 100% yes. Ooh, quickly dropped to 67%. I don't think that this poll is going to end up below 90. I really don't. I think that a lot of us looking at this felt that this was a lost opportunity. And, I've seen differing opinions across the media landscape, talking about defense, defense wins championships, or offense, and how offense is now clearly winning championships. And, whether a defense plays good or not, if you have a potent offense, you still always have a chance, right? You always have a puncher's chance. And this weekend, I caught something during the pregame with Brady and Strahan that we'll talk about, because it fits to what I was talking about last weekend. And it's exactly what the Eagles did this weekend. And so we'll get into all that. But let's kind of recap what happened this weekend. So right away, I will say that Saquon Barkley, Saquon does Saquon things. He had another good game. He put his stamp on the NFC Championship game pretty quickly. He took a pitch and zoomed to the edge right away, raced downfield, spun out of tackles, weaved his way 60 yards to pay dirt. And, did we expect anything less against a Washington defense that was one of the last teams in the NFL against the run? No, I didn't expect anything different. The only thing that I'm questioning here is why the hell Ben Johnson didn't stick with the run game. And we kept hearing that over the weekend. We've heard it from other media, personalities talking about the same thing, that was Ben Johnson's biggest mistake last week, was not sticking to the run game. When you saw Saquon, just kind of busting out, doing his thing, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I couldn't help but have those same thoughts. Now, he's an incredible player, obviously. But yeah, there's no reason to think that the Lions, I know everyone we go back to that 3rd and 1 where it was an empty backfield. And again, the thought was, well, obviously they were going to go for it on 4th if we didn't fumble the ball. But I think Gibbs is on the same tier as a Saquon Barkley. There's no reason the Lions shouldn't have been able to run that ball that whole game and control the clock, which is what Washington was trying to do against Philadelphia. They came out, had an 18-play opening drive, and then they settled for 3. And mind you, they went for it on 4th down multiple times. The opening drive. It's curious to me. Are we going to see Dan Quinn be criticized as being reckless, or is he going to be lauded? Because if it were Dan Campbell, like we saw against the Niners in the NFC Championship last year, he's criticized. This was the first quarter, but Dan Quinn's just going for it. He knew he needed to control the ball. He knew he needed to find the end zone. They settled for 3, and then 1 play, and Barkley was gone. So painful to watch, though, again, because the Lions, if they played the Commanders again, do you not feel like they could beat them? Not to try to live in the past, but
I mean, repeat that last part there. If what?
If we played Washington again, we could beat them.
Oh, 1,000%. We should have beat him that day.
Should have. Absolutely.
Should have beat him that day. I mean, this is a rookie quarterback that you could force to do rookie things. Now I get it. There's a lot of people out there that say, and I agree, that he is well beyond his years, as a rookie in the NFL. He's playing well beyond his years already. And I think that the reason for that, or a large reason for that, is because of the style of offense that they run. Every defense in the NFL has always had trouble against the RPO. And if you have somebody that runs it really well and they know their keys and they can get in and out of looks pretty quickly and make very quick decisions, you're going to have trouble. There's not one defense out there that has really done well until we saw this weekend. I mean, they still put up 23 points. The Eagles offense just put up more against the depleted Washington defense. And I mean, our Washington defense, it's really terrible. I mean, they were not that great. They haven't been great all season. They've been winning, off the back of Jaden Daniels all season. But the Eagles did something this weekend that I expected Aaron Glenn to do. And again, I'll get into that in just a minute. But I want to go back to something that you were talking about here, and that is, how many times did he go for it on 4th down? I'm trying to pull up the stats right now.
Yeah, it was multiple. I know Dan Quinn because I was making a mental note of it in the first quarter, and they ran a fake punt. It was a sweet play call, but it's just crazy to see because, and this is why I go back to my strong feeling that Dan Campbell should have been the coach of the year because, and everyone says, well, the Vikings had, they weren't expected to be good. I don't know why meeting expectations, particularly when those expectations are high, is a bad thing. But Dan Campbell seems to be the trailblazer. He's the one that started going for it on 4th down all the time. And you see teams across the NFL, they're doing it. Teams are doing it when they play the Lions because they know they got to match it. He's pushing all the chips to the table, so we've got to do the same thing. I think Dan Campbell was a trend setter because Washington went for multiple 4th downs on their opening drive and a fake punt in the first quarter. It just tells you their mindset going into that game.
Yeah, I'm not going to dip off too much into the Dan Campbell not getting head coach of the year. That's just blasphemy. I'm sorry. You took a team that was down 21 plus players on IR and you brought it to 15-2, and then you kicked the shit out of O'Connell in week 18, and you're going to tell me that Dan Campbell doesn't win that award?
Exactly.
This is just the AP doing what the AP does every year, which is not give anything to the Lions ever. It seems like. I know we came away with a few things, but that's just BS to me. It's absolute. Everyone that has an AP vote right now should have it taken. Every single one of them. I don't care who it is. I don't care what Lions media writer has one. It should just be pulled. Pull them all, and get new people in every year, because this is just it's silly. It's absolutely silly. So the 4th down, the 4th and goes. It's funny to me that, I think the 4th down conversion rate in the NFL is I mean, it's got to be closer to 30%, right? Let me take a look here. I just had it up yesterday.
I know while you're grabbing that real quick, I see Brandy Coffee says, let's see where the comment goes. Didn't watch football yesterday. I wondered if there were going to be some of the Rocked On Rise and Grind morning show listeners that were going to be saying that this morning that maybe weren't able to stomach it. While Will is pulling that up, good morning, Trace. Good morning, Chuck, Jay-Z, Derek Lewis, Kevin Barr. We've got our normal crowd here this morning. Daniel Goodrich, Mike P, King SJ. Good to see everybody this morning. Hope everybody is doing well.
Yeah, anybody else that we miss, obviously, you know that we don't do it by purpose, but I don't know why I'm not able to find this whole stat. I'm looking at all of it, and if I were to give a quick summary, you know, just based on quick math, it's about 35% success rate in the NFL this last season, about 35%. Now, don't quote me on that stat. I will get it at some point. I don't know why I can't find the entire stat right now, but the Commanders were 66% yesterday. They were 4 of 6 on fourth down efficiency. That's pretty damn good. Now, the Eagles were 1 for 1. They didn't need to go for it a bunch on fourth down because they didn't put themselves in that position. So having to go for it on fourth down, I think it's, you know, down and distance really plays a big role into this. I think that there's a right and a wrong way to approach it. I think that what we've learned from Dan this year, Dan Campbell, that is, not Dan Quinn, is that I think he took a more measured approach to the fourth down situation when he was going to go for it and when he was not. If it was, you know, across the 40-yard line, even as close to the 50-yard line, and it was short, you know, like 1 yard, he was going for it. If it was at the 40-yard line and it's, you know, 4th and 4 or less, I felt like he was going for it. If you're at the 30-yard line and it's 4th and 6, he's going for it. But then it also depends on where you're at in the game. Is it early in the game? Do you need late game heroics? Do you need to put the team out, you know, as far as just score one more time and it ends the game? I think all of that stuff matters. And I think that's where Dan Campbell changed this year, and where maybe some of the other coaches did not rise up to his level of experience, if you will. Because for everybody else in the NFL that's doing it, they haven't been doing it as long as Dan. It seems like, you know, like he's been doing it for the last few years, last few seasons, and now they're playing catch up to learning what our statisticians are, you know, providing Dan Campbell as far as analytics as to when to go for it, when to not go for it. And I think he's dialed in right now on what his team can do, especially knowing the players that we have on the offensive side of the football and what they can accomplish with any down and distance. So I think it's a good point, you know, that Dan is the trailblazer here. I believe that. I really do. And I still think it's BS that he doesn't win Coach of the Year. Two years in a row. Like, it's going to take a Super Bowl for him. And even then, it shouldn't matter because the vote ends at the end of week 18.
Exactly right. Yep. And that was my consolation this year was I just, you know, it's not like I set out every year to say I want the Detroit Lions to get the Coach of the Year, right? It's that I want to win the Super Bowl, but with the reason is because Dan Campbell was doing it his first year when the Lions weren't expected to be good, so they just thought, oh, he's just acting like he's playing Madden. But that's continued. He is the trendsetter. I never saw coaches go for it as often until Dan Campbell seemingly started setting that trend.
So I can tell you why. I can tell you why he doesn't win. I hate to say this, everybody. I really do. But I am seeing Vegas involved so much in these games today. Like, I'm seeing it. Ever since the NFL allowed betting, I'm sure they're getting some sort of kickbacks from all of these betting sites. They have to be. But the point is, Kevin O'Connell was a minus 1,600. You had to bet a ton to win some money. Dan Campbell was a plus 750. Dan Quinn was a plus 4,000. Andy Reid a plus 4,000. Sean Payton a plus 15,000. I'm sorry. I feel like, even though that these are individuals at the AP that are voting for this stuff, I feel like somewhere along the line, Vegas is injected into all this, and they're ensuring that they're not losing hundreds of millions of dollars like they did, 74 million just before the Lions Commanders game. I feel like this is just, it's just too much influence, to be honest. I think it's too much influence.
It's hard to argue that. Good morning to you as well, J. Rod, Richard Blakely.
Yeah. So next up, you were wondering, my thoughts and emotions on the game.
Yeah, just we were talking before we switched to watching that game, and I wondered, I got to imagine this is painful for Will, but yeah, I thought, what were your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions as you sat down to start watching that game again, knowing how close the Lions were to have been playing in that.
I mean, it really hit me this morning, to be honest with you. Like, it wasn't even during the game. I mean, yeah, I felt like we should have been there, and I felt that we could have beat either one of those teams that won yesterday. And this morning it hit me. I'm like, man, like we're on our way to the Super Bowl this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it would have been. Today would have been, we're in the Super Bowl. We're talking about it all week. We're getting ready to go to New Orleans, and we're not. So it really hit me, 5:30 this morning. I'm like, I should be writing about what it's going to be like in New Orleans, and how, shout out to Megan this morning. She said, did you know that people in New Orleans got a little bit of snow and they were just abandoning their cars on the highway? So could you imagine if there was a little bit of snow that flew during the week of the Super Bowl, how crazy it could have been down there? There could have been gridlock everywhere. Could have been a mess. Could have been an absolute mess. But anyway, it hit me this morning that we should have been here. We absolutely. I understand our defense was depleted, and I'm sick of hearing the narrative about pass rush this, pass rush that, or defense this, defense that. How does the 30th ranked defense in the NFL, in the Washington Commanders, make it to the AFC Championship game against the number one offense in the league? It's not about the defense, right? It's about execution, and it's about putting the guys in the right position to win. And again, I'm going to talk about this because Brady in Strahan, they said it this weekend before the game. They said it. They vindicated me once again. And I'm not trying to just toot my horn, but I guess I need to drive the point that when I see it, I see it. And if a seven times Super Bowl winning Tom Brady says it, not only said it this weekend, but he said it last weekend after our Friday show, leading up to that game. He said it that weekend too, just before the game. Same thing. And I've got the audio, and we're gonna play it here in just a little bit. But my thoughts, I guess, after the game, Riley, was this. I'm really feeling for Zach Ertz right now. Like, this dude is just trying to win a Super Bowl. He took a gamble by going to a Commanders team that had a rookie quarterback, new coach. Was it about money at that point? Could have been. Because I don't think that he foresaw all of this happening. And he said something during the season, or was leading up to, the wild card weekend, where he said, once we were in training camp and I saw who Jaden really was, he's like, I knew we had something special here. And he was right. I mean, he saw it, he knew it, he believed it. So I'm feeling for Zach this morning, because he had a really good moment with former Eagle Fletcher Cox after the game. And I think that really kind of showed, that the NFL is just bigger about these rivalries. It's bigger than just football. You've got the human emotion involved in this, and good people like Zach Ertz. I mean, I think he's just a good overall, just a good dude. And for him to come up a little bit short, and at his age, kind of chasing that ring at this point, how much longer is he going to be able to do that? And should he have stuck with the Lions? Probably not, I guess, is my question, or my answer to that, because, well, we're a little bit thick inside that tight end room already. And I don't know that he would have gotten a bunch more playing time at all. And I don't know that he really would have been able to help us, down the stretch. He had a really good role carved out in Washington as one of the leading receivers. And I think that his run was amazing. It'd be interesting to see where he is next year.
Yeah, he said post game, I saw his quote. He said, I wish I was still 22. I mean, we talk about it all the time on the show, and the average lifespan of an NFL career is not long, and life in general just goes so fast. I remember 10 years ago, like it was 2 years ago, and you just see, that's this time of year too, where the guys that are, I mean, he had that short stint with us last year, as you alluded to, and doing everything he can, doing his damnedest to try to win one of these things. But going to a team with a rookie quarterback seems like the one situation you wouldn't want to go to if that's your goal. But yeah, he was big on Jaden Daniels, as I know you were as well. And it'd be interesting to see. It seemed like last year, this time it was, have we ever seen a rookie quarterback as good as CJ Stroud? And now Jaden Daniels might have even, I mean, he did have a better year than Stroud did. And so
Yeah.
Best wishes to Zach Ertz.
So I see some people in the chat saying, "Why does Will look so different this morning?" So I've got ear monitors in now. I've
Oh, that's
transitioned away from the big bulky headphones because I've got really bad neck problems, and I had it surgically repaired almost 5 years now, or 5 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. Matter of fact, it's 5 years ago in 4 days is when I had my surgery. So I got to relieve the pressure on my neck, and these things are actually a game changer because not only is it more clear, I can hear just about everything without any of the interference, and it's actually good. So I'm looking forward to my neck feeling better, hopefully by the end of the week. So during last night's game, one thing kept popping in my mind, and that's why they call this a game of inches, and it's why they've called it a game of inches for a long time. And to me, this was that first down that wasn't, right? So Josh Allen in the Bucs and Chiefs game, I'm not going to try to wear the tinfoil hat this morning, but I just got to say, man, they're clinging to a 1-point lead early in the fourth quarter. The Buffalo Bills went for it on 4th and 1 with the Josh Allen sneak, and it looked as if he got it. It really did. And not just by 1 inch, but by at least 4, 5, 6 inches. And then he was shoved backwards. So it's always been the rule that forward progress is where the ball lies. And he was there. Now, one of the line judges appeared to concur with where this ball should have been placed. He comes trotting down the line just above the first down line. But the other one didn't. He was just inside the white line. And as they started to come together, well, the one that was above the first down line started to creep towards, behind the line. And I'm like, oh, here we go. I could see it happening. I'm like, there's no way that the replay is going to be able to show this. It is so crowded in there. There's no way they're going to overturn it. When they call this, a turnover on downs, it's done. And I mean, they still had a slim chance after that, but I guess for me, the call was upheld on the review. I wasn't surprised. CBS rules analyst Gene Steratore spoke for everyone who obviously isn't a Chiefs fan when he said, the Chiefs' go-ahead TD drive was set up by a ruling that Josh Allen did not get a Bills first down. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Gene Steratore, they all reacted to the ruling. Romo said, wow, I felt like he gained it by about a third of a football. And Steratore says, I agree. Jim Nantz also agreed. So how do you have these analysts in the box watching the game? I mean, they're right there, typically on the 50-yard line or very close to it anyway. They're able to see everything. They have all the monitors. They have all the replay stuff going on. Watching it live, I'm like, that's a first down. It's tight, sure, but that's the game of inches. And that's why you need to have good refs in good position. And we have all these damn cameras everywhere, or at least the NFL does now, and they can't get it right. So it brings me to the point that at what time are they going to step into, the better technology? Just put a sensor inside these balls. It'd probably require 3 sensors, one in the middle, one in the tip of the ball, so 3, and they all bounce off each other. And so wherever that ball goes, you know exactly where it is on the field. All it requires is a few sensors up and down the sidelines, and you will know exactly where that ball was. And then they can paint the line and they can put the ball. It's not that difficult. But if they do that, Riley, does this remove the ref's ability to change the outcome of a game? What did you think about that first down that wasn't? Or did you really even think it was a first down, I guess?
Yeah, I did. And it's as I was watching the game, I'm just thinking, like, it's just wild to me because it seems like the script for every one of these AFC Championship games seems to be almost the same thing. It's the Chiefs against the Bills, and it's going to come right down to the end, and there's going to be some questionable call that's going to go the Chiefs' way, and then they're going to the Super Bowl again. I would love that if they could. Anything you could do, because the refs are human, and I've always kind of had this philosophy watching sports. If you are watching a game where your favorite team is not playing, how often do you see yourself complaining about the officiating? For me, I realized it wasn't a ton. I was like, it's only when I have a dog in the fight, when I have a vested interest. But as I've grown and matured and kind of realized, look at things from a broader perspective, it is frustrating that every one of these games, because the narrative can always be blown calls, right? But if you could eliminate that, all the better for the game. Um, I mean, I'm not a huge Kansas City Chiefs hater. They've done it 8 consecutive times. We've seen as Lions fans how hard it is. We didn't even get back to the NFC Championship for a second consecutive year, although I think we'll be back next year. But yeah, that'd be one less thing to have to worry about as a fan, kind of watching these games.
I've never been one to really blame the refs for a loss or for an outcome. We talk about it, but what I've noticed, to your point too, when you have a dog in the fight, it's a little bit easier to complain or put on that tinfoil hat and talk about the what ifs. But sometimes it is so egregious, it is so clear that there isn't any other answer in the world that is going to make you feel differently.
Yep.
And look, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm not necessarily a Chiefs hater. I mean, yeah, I rise up, or razzed Austin, a little bit over the weekend yesterday. But it was, hey, congratulations to the Chiefs. Now they better get it done. You got yourself here. You shouldn't have been here. Now you better go three-peat it, because it's all for nothing. And all of these other teams and everyone that has gone up against the Chiefs in the playoffs, what they're going to feel right now is they're going to feel shafted if they don't go win, because of all of the calls that have been questionable. And I started talking about the penalties, this weekend, even with the Lions. And, Sean McDermott said this after the game, and then I want to move into talking about some penalties for a moment, since we're on that subject. Sean McDermott said this. He said, I thought he had it. Just short of the line was actually the first down. So what it looked like to me when it was sitting next to me with the marker, just inside that white stripe was the first down. It looked like he got it. That's all I can say. Now, obviously, we know 5 plays later, Mahomes rushed for a score, and that gave the Chiefs a 29-22 lead. The Bills would tie the game again, but Kansas City kicked a field goal, and Buffalo couldn't answer. The Chiefs won 32-29 to reach the Super Bowl 59 against Philadelphia. Now, 2 things here I will say. The last play that Josh Allen threw, not only was that an incredible play by Josh Allen to give his team an opportunity, we see 2 tight ends lose 2 games this weekend. It was a Ravens game, and now last night with the Bills, Kincaid drops that ball. You can't drop that ball. Like, not only was Allen on his back foot running away from a corner blitz, but he put the ball in a position to win, and he fails. So he's got to feel terrible. But for all the people, saying that, pass rush there was no pass rush. It was a corner blitz last night. So if you want to call that pass rush, great. But typically we refer to the pass rush as, your edge rushers, your outside linebackers, guys that are up on the defensive line. But that was a brilliant call. Brilliant call.
Perfect time.
Brilliant call by Andy Reid's. Who's their DC over there?
Steve Spagnuolo.
Spagnuolo, that's right. So brilliant call. The fact that they didn't use that play all game, and then they used it at the end of the game to get, Josh Allen, off schedule, and they won. Because usually Josh Allen off schedule, you don't win. So brilliant call. I thought it was in fitting fashion that the Chiefs, at least they did something at the end of the game to kind of secure, their opportunity. But leading up to this game and, even in the first, second, and third quarter, there's just a lot of questionable calls. And that's kind of where I want to go next. If you have anything else you want to add to that, otherwise we'll move on to talking about some fines, some penalties, and maybe this Chiefs advantage in the NFL.
Well, I think you make a good point there that I was about to be like, we'll just keep it moving. But since you asked, I do want to point out, I think it's a great point that you make, that it would be easy to call something like that earlier in the game. I mentioned basketball sometimes when I'm on the show, but when I was 8 years old, it was 1997, actually 98, the year, because Utah, the Jazz played the Bulls in the NBA Finals. Michael Jordan's last shot, he later talked about the Jazz would always throw the ball to Karl Malone on the block and he'd catch it. And Jordan intentionally waited. He said, I eyed it all series long, but I didn't want to go do it in the second quarter in game 3. I wanted to wait till the fourth quarter of game 6 when we could win it. Malone's totally not even looking, and Jordan goes behind him and steals the ball. And it's the same kind of thing with the brilliance of that play call is you save those. You got to wait for the right time to call the right play. Allen had 3-4 people in his face like immediately. And how he got out of that and even gave Kincaid a chance, crazy. I love Dalton Kincaid as a former Ute, but yeah, I think it's a good point there. Plays like that are why the Kansas City Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl.
So there's this huge narrative, right, about the Chiefs having the benefit of the doubt from the refs. And I found this interesting, that there was what they're calling a Chiefs incredible advantage or referee advantage in the playoffs over the last few seasons. So the Chiefs getting an incredibly favorable whistle in the playoffs is what a lot of people are complaining about. And according to the data that Warren Sapp put together, of all people, right? Warren Sapp, this is what we come up with. In their 11 playoff games since 2021, the Chiefs' opponents have had 10 games with at least 10 penalties against. The Kansas City Chiefs have had 0 games with 10 penalties against. Now, there is not a single game in that span where the Chiefs had been penalized more than their opponent. Tell me that that's not telling. That in every game in the last 11 playoff games, 10 out of 11 games, their opponents have 10 plus penalties, and never once have the Chiefs been penalized more than their opponent. That to me that sells it for me right there. Now, it seems like the Chiefs are constantly given this advantage in the playoffs by the refs. And how could that really be, right? I mean, maybe Andy Reid is just able to prepare his team better than the coaches, that are on the other sideline. The Chiefs were called, which I don't believe, but the Chiefs were called with 5.4 penalties per game during the 2024 regular season, the fewest in the NFL per any other team in the NFL, 5.4 per game. In their last 65 regular season games, they've accumulated more penalty yards in 38 of them, which is 55.9%. The Jets were by far the league's most penalized team with 8.1 per game during the regular season, the highest per game figure of any team since 2019. And if you think that coaching matters, think again, because Kansas City was called with 36 penalties in those 11 playoff games, a 3.2 average. So not only did they have the lowest regular season penalties called at 5.4, it was even lower in the playoffs at 3.2. So perhaps they say that the game is called differently in the playoffs, or maybe the Chiefs are just good at influencing the referee decisions. And I would say yes to both. Kansas City has been under fire from NFL fans who are upset with the way that the Chiefs are handled, in particularly Patrick Mahomes. Now, this weekend, there was a comment in one of my videos, and they said, you know why Patrick Mahomes wears number 15? And that's because if you look at the guy wrong, you're going to get 15 yards. And I mean, come on, that was just too good. Too good. So now the Chiefs lined up to face the Bills in a huge playoff game Sunday, where obviously the eyes were certainly going to be on the refs. What were they going to do? How are they going to handle Patrick Mahomes in what is considered to be, the best flopper of all time? He is. He's got LeBron beat hands down. And last week there was a huge flop in the game. They got called. But get this, as I talked about the Lions game with the Commanders last week, the difference is this. The Texans players that were in the game that got flagged for Mahomes, right? Getting these big time penalties in last week's game. Not one of them was fined by the NFL. The NFL did not fine Will Anderson for the first quarter roughing the passer foul. The league also did not fine defensive tackle Fatu Kasi or linebacker Henry Tutu for their Malachi crunch after the Mahomes slide in the second half. Now, both of those fouls prompted criticism of Chiefs bias on the part of the officials. I would say you're right. How could you not feel that way? But I just find it funny that, these flags get thrown for Mahomes, for the Chiefs. No penalty, no fines after the fact. Okay. And then in the Commanders game against the Lions, well, not only was it not flagged during the game, but you could clearly see, now I know I'm not crazy, but you could clearly see that during the Commanders and Lions game, had those calls been made, we have a much different game, because those players potentially should have been ejected. At least Luvu should have been. Twice in that game, he should have been flagged for what is a personal foul, right? The hit to Jared Goff and then the hip drop tackle on Jahmyr Gibbs. He should have been gone. That changes the game. That opens up the defense even more so. That takes out one of their best players out of the game. Now, I'm not saying that that's how I want us to win, but this is win or go home. And I'm sorry, if you don't call a fair game and we see it, then obviously I'm going to go back and look and see, what could have happened. So the penalties that were not called against the Lions do come up with fines this weekend, and I highlighted it yesterday. Luvu was fined not once but twice for a little over $16,000 apiece for his hip drop tackle on Jahmyr Gibbs and his chin hit on Jared Goff there on the interception. Now, it doesn't take the points off the board, but it does put the Lions an extra 15 yards closer on the ensuing kickoff, and it does potentially remove Luvu from the game. So now that I've painted this picture that, yep, there's clear bias, in my opinion, for the Chiefs. They get flagged, no fines. Well, the Lions don't get the flags, but they get the fines on the Commanders. What do you think about that whole scenario, Riley? And, of course, I want to hear in the comments below what you guys think about this scenario.
Yeah, I think I want to actually read a comment and kind of get your reaction on that as well. It's Lannerx 420X. He says, I don't know why we keep talking about the refs and the Chiefs. If we think it's rigged, then why cover the sport? If it's rigged, the Lions will never win. Josh Allen didn't get it done. He had his chance. And I replied to him there just in the chat. I said, I don't disagree. I don't think it's scripted where the Chiefs have to win it. Certainly, I feel like the Lions can win. Otherwise, I would agree with you. If it's rigged, then what are we doing? But I would be curious to see, I wanted to bring that comment to your attention and see kind of how you would react to that.
I mean, I think I get it. I understand. And congratulations to Lanner. Obviously, he won that mini helmet just last week, I believe. I get it. If we feel that it's always rigged or there's bias, and I think there's two different lanes here. Is it rigged and scripted by the NFL, and is there bias and calls being made that shouldn't be made? I think there's two different lanes. Do I feel like there's a script in the NFL? I don't necessarily. But do I feel that there's a bias for certain players like Patrick Mahomes that can flop and then just turn and look at the refs and he gets the flag, even though the ref didn't see anything? He just gets the flag and they don't talk about it. They just march it off and that's it. To me, that's bias. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a rigging or a scripting going on, but I think that the bias is what's turning into that conversation. And all we're doing here is just highlighting what everyone's talking about, right? Everyone's talking about this last night. If you Google right now, rigged NFL, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see this everywhere. So it's just something that, hey, it's news from the weekend. We're in the Lions off season. We're going to talk about it. My goal here is to stoke your comments, your opinions, your thoughts. You tell us how you feel about it. You're entitled to your opinion, and you're obviously entitled to put that in the chat or in the comments or whatever. I've got really thick skin, so it's not so much that I'm trying to have a debate with people about it. We're talking about it. We're painting the picture. You tell us what you think. I'm going to try to present facts. I'm going to try to give you as much research as I can, and then it's up to you to make your own thoughts and opinions on it. I'll finish this topic by saying this, and then Riley, you get your comments. The thing that's most disappointing to me is that the Lions didn't get the calls. And yes, we have to play better than the other team, right? We have to be able to show up in all three phases of the game. We can't turn the ball over 5 times in a game. But those things get called, well, maybe that turnover doesn't happen. Maybe 2 of those turnovers don't happen. The game is totally different at that point then. And that's why, for me, it just has to get called right. And these are not things that they missed. They saw it. Clearly, they saw it, because during the game, the sky judge is the one that saw this and reported it to the NFL and said, hey, this happened during the game. You have to now look at it for fines.
Yep. Or have Goff go to the tent to check for a concussion. Why?
And it's at that point right there, Riley, that they should have reviewed that play with the sky judge and said, yep, there's an egregious penalty that needs to be called here. I mean, it's clear. It was very clear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess what are your final thoughts on this little topic here?
Yeah, Raider Goldheart says it's more biased for sure, and I think that spells it out in the stats. Again, I don't. I think I agree. Fall right in line with where you did. Is there a bias towards certain players and teams? I think so, and that's you see that borne out in 9 of 10 games they've got less penalties than the other team. But it's interesting.
Yeah, 10 of 11 playoff games they've gotten less penalties.
Yeah, the way football's played, we just know it's not. People say there's holding on every play. That exactly, like if it were just the human element of officiating was not part of it. What if it could just be straight, like down to a computer running it and making these calls? It would. I just don't see. You wouldn't have a team 10 of 11 games. It's going to be a lot closer to a 50-50 with the way that it's officiated. And then there was even that fourth down where there was a flag thrown that was just randomly picked up, and a lot of people thought, was that just in case? But again,
how many times have we seen the just in case flag for the Lions? All the time.
I remember is the game at Dallas in 2014, Stafford screaming home cooking, just flat out overturning a pass interference. It's just interesting.
Well, even last season, NFC Championship game, Fildor, the ball bounces off his face, IU catches it, but just in case, we're going to throw a flag and say that there was potentially some defensive holding or some sort of defensive penalty, just in case, the play didn't turn out in the 49ers' favorite, or favoritism, I guess. So anyway, we could talk about this stuff all day. I could do 5 hours on, all of the different scenarios that have gone on. We know that the Lions have been completely shafted for years. And I guess I will say this. I think that the part of the reason that maybe Dan Campbell's not earning his graces within the ranks of the NFL, or maybe with Roger Goodell or whatever. I said this a few months ago, that if you really believe that there is a script or a narrative against the Lions, what Dan Campbell is doing is he is pushing against the norms. He is going for it on fourth down with a middle finger up to the NFL saying, you are not going to keep us out. You are not going to keep the door closed on us. I'm going to do whatever I can to remove every opportunity that the refs can screw us by going for it, by putting up points as much as we can, by changing the narrative of the game and how it's played. I'm going to try to keep you out. I think that there's some levity to that. I really do. Anyway, Stafford retiring, I haven't heard, but I've heard. I've heard that, the potential is he could retire. Maybe it's about time. Does he really have another year in him? I don't know. I mean, I think that Stafford will probably come back to some degree as an analyst for some media network. He could be on the sidelines or in a booth here in the next couple of seasons, honestly. So next up, go ahead.
No, I think he's got another year or two in him, but he's got a Super Bowl now, and so he could hang it up at any point now and be vindicated that he went and got his Super Bowl title in LA. And speaking of vindication, I don't know if this is where you were looking to go, Will, but what do we got next on the docket?
Give me 1 sec.
Dale Lynn says Lions made Vegas losers all year. Then Lions played Crapple with some refs doing blindfolds on, didn't help the matter.
Riley, give me 30 seconds here. If you wouldn't mind, just take the chat for just a moment. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you got it. Richard Blakely, Stafford has his money to retire for sure. No doubt about that. central scrutinizer. I can see Stafford filling a backup role. Interesting. I don't think he would. That's just me. I think if he stays, although the thoughts are in LA that they're going to have a decision from him sooner than later so that they can know how to move forward. Let's see. How many likes do we have in here? Trace usually is keeping a good pulse on that. Do we have ads on still?
What's that?
Somebody was saying that the ads were killing them. Derek Lewis, ads are killing me. I'm going to end up buying something stupid here. So I was asking how many likes do we have? Mine's still stuck at 5. Surely we've got more than that. That was from this morning. Hopefully we've got more than that by now. 57.
Yeah, we're at 57 likes. So if you guys want to jump it up to 75, we'll get those ads turned off. I mean, I'd love to hit 100 every day to get these ads off, especially in the off season, because that's really going to help us grow. And then it also makes sense for us. So I did the math, right? We give up about $5,000 a year on ads just every morning. Turning off ads for an hour, it's $5,000 a year is what it kind of came out to be. So we'll get those likes up above 75. We'll get the ads turned off for you. I got to make YouTube happy. Otherwise, they won't help me. Does that make sense? They won't put me in front of people. So I got to make them money, and then obviously that'll help us. So we'll get ads turned off for you here. Just 2 minutes. It'll be off. Promise. All right. So my next topic is more so about a topic I've been talking about. Now, does defense win championships? I think it helps, right? When you look at the last 15 Super Bowls. Now, I've done all the work on this channel multiple times, but when you look at the last 15 Super Bowls, there's been a clear, except for last season, there's been a clear defining situation that's been brewing here. It's always the number 1 or a top 5 ranked offense the majority of the time, and a 5 to 10 to 15th ranked defense on the Super Bowl winning team. So they usually have a top 5 offense, top 15 defense that wins the Super Bowl. And then I've done all the work just a couple of weeks ago where I highlighted, in the opening weekend, the wild card game, we did interceptions versus sacks. Interceptions, turnovers won more points that weekend than sacks did. Now, when you look at this weekend, there was something that happened, and I couldn't believe it happened. I mean, it couldn't have turned out more perfect. Brady and Strahan and, the entire Fox crew, right? They're on the field. They're doing pregame before yesterday's first game. My dad texts me and he says, "Hey, did you just see what Tom Brady said about the same thing you've been talking about? The same way that you said that the Lions should have played the Commanders defensively. He just said it." And I said, no way, because I missed it, right? I missed it. I was having a meeting with some other people, and so I missed it. So I went back, I found it, listened to it, and I couldn't believe it. This is 2 weeks in a row now where Brady came out before the Lions and Commanders game, or it was after the Lions and Commanders game, and he said, too much pressure. Like that's not how you win against an RPO and Jane Daniels or any RPO. You don't want to create, too much blitzing. You need to kind of sit back a little bit, corral, contain these guys, and give yourself the best opportunity to make Jaden, force a throw and make him make mistakes. Because if he can't run the ball, if he can't pass, or if he can't hand the ball off, and you're shutting down the run game, and then he can't run the ball, well, that eliminates 2 phases of the RPO. So then what? Well, you've got guys now in defense position to be able to knock down the pass, go up and get an interception, make Jaden make a bad decision. And that's exactly what the Eagles did this weekend. They made Jaden make bad decisions. And how do I know that to be true? Well, when people say that, the defense won or whatever, it really didn't. Did it really? Jaden was only sacked 3 times. Jalen Hurts was sacked 2 times. And when you look at the reason why, I think you have to look at the totality of the stat line here. Would one more sack mean that you're going to win a game? No. Not when it's separated by 30 points. It's not why you won the game, right? Did the defense do anything extraordinary, from a pass rush standpoint? No, they didn't. And here's what you need to look at. Jaden put the ball up 20 more times than Jalen Hurts. Every week I've been saying these numbers. When you put the ball up over 30 times, you're going to throw a pick. When you put it up over 40 times, you're going to throw 2 picks. And if you put the ball up over 50 times, you're probably going to throw 3 or 4 picks. Well, Jaden only threw 1 interception. He put up the ball 48 times. He played really well from that perspective. But when you look at pressures and pressure stats from NFL Pro, right? Not PFF, from NFL Pro, Jaden was pressured 14 times on 48 dropbacks. That is just 25% of his throws. Whereas Jalen Hurts was pressured 34.4%, 11 times he was pressured on 28 dropbacks. So how can you say the defense was that much better against Jaden and that's why the Eagles won? It doesn't bear out. The numbers don't work. The reason why the Eagles won is because of this right here.
Talk a little bit more about Daniels, just his decision making. Just for a rookie, I've never seen this before.
I think his poise and his composure in the pocket, certainly when they blitz. I don't expect Philly to blitz much today. It's not a recipe for success. They just got to keep the ball in front of him, try to make some disruptive plays at the D-line, but he's been so impressive. The number 2 overall pick, how do you come in and live up to that? He's exceeded expectations. Really incredible.
And I agree with you. I think from a defensive standpoint, whenever you get a rookie, there always seems to be something you can do to get to them. I think everybody's tried throughout the season, and he's only gotten better with handling anything thrown his way. And I agree with Tom. Just kind of just sit back and just try not to blitz him, bring too much pressure, because this kid seems to pick it up.
Vic Fangio blitzed him in the second game. Probably won't do it much today. The accuracy in the deep ball is something that's just, I'm shocked by it.
Yeah. Right, great touch on all those deep passes. This is one defense that doesn't give up too many of those downfield passes. So it's got to be a lot of jabs, not too many uppercuts.
A lot of jabs, not too many uppercuts. Strahan, Brady, I mean, they just said it. You need to sit back. The defense can't blitz too much. You can't get after this guy. The defense already is good at taking the ball away, right? They're good in the pass game, which the Lions were fairly good in the pass game. You know, defensively, we were coming up with takeaways. May have allowed a few extra yards, but had we not sent everybody on a blitz, we would have had guys back to be able to take care of the pass game. And so they sat back, right? They put their linebackers, you know, what I call a spy position. They're just facing Jaden. Right? They're not going hard trying to blitz through the line. They're trying to take down the run game. Yep, they might get 3, 4, 5 yards. And then they make sure that they catch up in the pass game. But they were forcing Jaden to make mistakes by not blitzing. And I forget who was saying that there at the end. It might have been Howie Long, that, you know, Vic Fangio blitzed the hell out of him in the second week. He's not going to do that again because it didn't work out. And that's exactly what I said prior to our game is you cannot blitz the RPO, and you definitely can't blitz the number 1 quarterback in the league against the blitz, which is Jaden Daniels. This season was the best quarterback against the blitz. And what does Aaron Glenn do? He blitzed almost 55% of downs. That is why the ball, you know, that is why they were able to keep the ball and keep pushing the ball downfield. First down after long gain, they were able to stay on the field and keep our offense off the field more often, right? Or at least not as often enough. We were on the field to be able to make plays. If you can't just keep the offense under control defensively, this is what happens. Last night, the Eagles played it perfectly. They sat back. They made sure that Jaden wasn't going to escape the pocket as often. They made sure he wasn't going to beat him with his legs as often. And they made sure that they were able to corral the run game. That takes away 2/3 of the RPO. And so last night as a rusher, Jaden Daniels had what? 48 yards on 6 attempts. So he had a few explosive plays. You can live with that because Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, they combined for 51 yards. You kept the team under 100 yards rushing. That is the exact number that I said that the Lions needed to keep the Commanders under 100 yards rushing combined, and you can win that game by forcing them to put up the ball. They forced him to put up the ball 48 times. Anytime you have to pass the ball that often, you are going to lose games. It's well defined in the NFL. Anytime you have to put up the ball that much, you are going to lose games because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to put the ball where it doesn't belong. So that's all I really had to say, about this whole defense, necessarily doesn't, or pass rush doesn't necessarily win games. Defense can win if you put the right defense on the field and the right scheme on the field. But if you put the wrong scheme on the field, you're in trouble. I don't care how good your defense is. If you do the wrong scheme, well, you can get beat. And that's what happened to the Lions. Injuries caught up to us in that game. I still don't understand why AG went to his bullheaded ways and just kept blitz after blitz after blitz, knowing we don't have the right amount, starters on the back end to keep up with that. So we saw it again this weekend. The Eagles learned from what they did wrong. The Lions didn't. So, Riley, I'll take your thoughts on that. And then I saw that we just had a super chat in here from MP, $1.99. Appreciate you, buddy. Says, Dennis Allen, bear down. Okay. I'm not gonna say go Bears, but whatever.
Yeah.
Appreciate the donation, MP.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve in the chat says on defense, we were going to get shredded either way. But I think that the point that Will's making is, and Will, you remember, we were watching the 49ers game, right? We were doing a live kind of play-by-play watch party that. And I remember you saying, this is not the defense I expect to see next week against Minnesota. And then, because you remember that first half in particular against San Francisco, they were just walking through our defense. And then Minnesota game happens, and what happened? We saw a totally different defense, and it was like, okay, we saw that come to fruition where it was all strategy, right? You got to apply the right game plan, take the right game plan to that specific game. And then against Washington, it looked more like it did against the 49ers than it did against the Vikings. It was just an interesting kind of way to do it. But you've got to pick your poison. And yeah, we just took the bait against Washington. It felt like the way we were playing defense, Washington's kind of looking around at each other like, are you okay? We'll take this. We can live with this. So, but yeah, certainly from the mouths of Tom Brady and Michael Strahan and people that have been on the field and done, had legendary careers, the philosophy and the strategy and the game plan, it's not anything different than we've been hearing on the Rise and Grind morning show.
So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit more. So first I want to say this, Fleeting EXP says that it was AG, or it wasn't AG, it was MCDC. He's the aggressive one. And I think that what you heard during the presser is that Dan Campbell wants to stay aggressive, and he said in man defense. He wants to play man defense. That's the aggressive nature. He doesn't want to play off man with his corners. He wants to play a man press style, but that doesn't mean that you have to be aggressive everywhere else on the defense with your linebackers and your defensive front blitzing, 6 guys all the time. That's way too aggressive. But to bear this out a little bit more, Michael Strahan, I mean, doesn't he still hold the record for the most sacks in the NFL? I believe he does. And it was over 21 or 22 or something like that. And so you're talking about one of the most aggressive, sack artists in the NFL to play the game. I think he played almost 20 seasons in the NFL or something like that. If he's telling you not to be aggressive, that takes a lot, right? That takes intelligence. It takes somebody that's been doing it for a long time to give you the key to the game, which is don't be aggressive against Jaden Daniels. Don't be aggressive against this offense. Sit back, pick your poison, force them to get one-dimensional. You've got to cure 3 problems. You got to cure the run game. You got to cure Jaden Daniels' feet, and then you have to take care of the pass game. If you remove 2 of those 3 elements, you've got a great shot at beating that team. And not only did they beat them, but then they beat the brakes off of them by putting up a 50-burger because they were able to put their offense on the field and score at will against a crap defense, is what we should have been able to do had Ben Johnson called the right game there too, which he didn't. get passing the ball in downs that we normally run the ball. Doesn't make any sense. So then again, we take the word from Tom Brady. I mean, 7 Super Bowls, 20 years, plus in the NFL, legendary career, clearly the best quarterback to ever do it. If he's giving you the key to the game, well, I would hope that at some point when I'm talking about these things, well before these guys have brought it to your attention on national TV, I wasn't wrong, right? I wasn't wrong. It's just I analyzed what I saw. I saw the patterns. I looked at the stats. That's what I saw in the game tape. I'm just glad that they kind of vindicated me a little bit because I got a lot of flack for it. People thinking that I was totally wrong in my assessment. We can agree to disagree. But then again, that doesn't mean we would have won the game either. We still could have lost the game. Even if they would have done a perfect defense, we still could have lost the game. The injuries could have been too much to bear, right? Even if we had 2 of those, turnovers taken away, we still could have lost the game. Sometimes 3 is too much. So I think that there's too many what ifs, but at the end of the day, all I'm trying to say is I'm going to listen to the guys that have been doing it for a long time because they were right in their assessment before the game. It's what the Eagles did. They won the game. Any thoughts on that, Riley?
Absolutely. No, I think as you're saying that too, it's just, don't forget Gibbs scored a touchdown in that third quarter. It was 31-28. So as poorly as the defense was playing, they were right there in it. All you're doing is you're just trying to keep your head above water, right? And maybe you get a pick, maybe you get a fumble, a pick 6, whatever it is, like they got, and that just flips the game. But that's also why we all love football, right? It's these swings, and it's hard to blow somebody out in football, and obviously Philadelphia did that against Washington yesterday, but
well, the Lions did it multiple times throughout this season.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, they put some whoopings on some people, but I kept thinking against that Washington game, if we just get a pick 6, that would have been all it took. I don't think we ever got the turnover, though. We turned it over 4 or 5 times, and that was it.
Had we have got a turnover in that game, look, I think AG had to put our guys in a winning position. He didn't. He didn't put our guys in a winning position. I mean, Kirby was not in the right position, but then again, you're allowing the Commanders to run the ball. And if you're allowing them to run the ball, well, they're not going to put the ball up for you to go get. So when I talk about patterns, right, patterns kind of tell you everything. So this next segment here, it kind of rolls right into what we were talking about with the defense. During the game, it was announced that the Bills quarterback, Josh Allen, likes to go left on 3rd and 4, or 3rd or 4th down and shorts, like 3rd and 4 and 1, right? Or 3rd or 4th down and 1 to go or 2 to go, right? He likes to go left. So I'm looking at this, right? And I'm hearing this from the announcers. I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, didn't I just say last week that against the Commanders, Jaden is one of the best against the blitz? Matter of fact, he was number 1. And just don't blitz, right? Just don't do it as often. Do it when you can. So if Josh Allen likes to go to the right, the Chiefs were ready. They were right there. They stacked the lanes on the right side of the defense. And they stopped Allen every single time. So after doing this 4 times in a row, why on earth would you continue to do it if it doesn't work? And if you know, right, your own tendency is to go left, don't you think changing it up at least a couple of times would have kept the Chiefs a little bit honest? And so this, again, it's like I'm looking at the Chiefs and what they're doing, and I'm like, okay, Reed is smart. He's obviously identified the pattern for Josh Allen. And he said, look, when they get into a short down, you're just going to stack the lanes on the right side of the defense. That's where he's going to go. You're going to be ready. And if he happens to go the other way, well, they might get the first down, or we might get lucky and stop him. But at least let's shut down his tendency, his pattern, which is to go left. So when I study patterns and stats lead me there, right? Watching game tape leads me there. Those are the things that I'm going to try to bring to you again this season, is the stats and the tendencies and the patterns throughout the year. Maybe we do an entire segment on it. Maybe we create a series on it, and we just kind of study the patterns and the the stats that match the patterns for some of our matchups. So for the Lions, all they had to do was consider the patterns and find the things that your opponent likes to do and does well. And those patterns should give you a great game plan. But you know what? A smart team, a smart coach, a smart OC or DC, they will know to change it up when it matters. So yeah, not every time you're going to be successful. But last night, the Chiefs were successful every single time in stopping Allen because they never changed a damn thing. They got stuck in their ways. And so when you have an Aaron Glenn that sometimes would get stuck in his ways. Now, I'm not taking anything away from him. Phenomenal DC. I mean, he put us into a situation to win 15 ball games this year, or I should say 8 more ball games this year, when we had no defense. I mean, we had half our starters were gone. What he was able to do throughout this season was absolutely incredible. But in this situation, the biggest moment of the season until the next one, you can't fall short in the expectation of identifying the patterns and using them to your advantage. So on the other side of this, why did they run the ball every time? As far as the Bills, why did they run the ball? Not one short pass, not one screen, nothing different going to the other side of the defense. That's what helped lose them this game. Patterns. It's everything. It really is. Riley, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's got to be tough for, I hope everybody in the chat knows we're not living in the past. We're not holding on to this. But we're just breaking it down as far as when I feel like when Will said it, spelled it out, and plain as day on the show here. And then you watch the games yesterday, and it brings it up and it ties it all together for us to think, man, we had that opportunity. But I think going forward, and this will be something be an interesting topic as well, is I don't think that the Lions lost their only opportunity. I think that we're going to be back going forward. Get some guys back on defense. Maybe the defensive game plan would have been different if we had more bodies. But no, I'm right there with you, Will. It's tough to kind of put 2 and 2 together on that and figure out why we had that plan that we did against Washington.
So coming up next, we're going to be talking about Lions news the second half of the hour. I know we're a little bit behind here, but we're going to be talking about Lions news next. And we're going to do that when we get back from a word from one of our sponsors. We'll be back here in 30 seconds.
Thousands of people are discovering Uper Lights, Michigan's newest, funnest rock to go find on the shores of the Great Lakes. Don't go out with just any light. Try the Convoy C8 from uperlights.com. It's guaranteed for life, and you'll find all the ones everyone else misses. Quality UV lights that are perfect for Uper Lights with prices starting as low as $20. Please make sure to visit uperlights.com for all your UV flashlight needs with the best guarantees on the market. Just what you wanted and not what you didn't. The best quality, the best guarantees, and the best UV flashlights from uperlights.com.
Okay, so we've got a bit of Lions news to discuss this morning. We had breaking news over the weekend that Calvin Shepard was going to remain with the Lions, but he's also going to be elevated to the defensive coordinator position. And now we have a leading candidate potentially as our offensive coordinator. So I guess, Riley, I don't know where you would like to start, but I guess let's get into Calvin for just a second. And before we do that, though, you had found something this weekend, Section 344. What did you have this weekend that you wanted to go over? It was a quote or tweet or something.
Yeah, so Section 344 Lions is his handle. And I think that this kind of goes into what we were just talking about. And it's something that we, understandably, if, you're thinking, man, is the Lions window closed? Did we miss a huge opportunity here? Are we ever going to be able to get this close again? Well, Section 344 on Lions put up a tweet as it pertains to Super Bowl windows closing quickly. He said, just of recent, over the last 8 years, the Buffalo Bills have been in the playoffs 7 of those 8 years. The San Francisco 49ers, 7 NFC championship appearances since 2011. The Philadelphia Eagles have been in the playoffs 7 of the last 8 years. 3 Super Bowl trips over that time after winning yesterday. The Kansas City Chiefs, albeit they are the gold standard, 10 straight playoff trips, 5 straight Super Bowl trips, or 5 Super Bowl trips of those 10 years. Baltimore Ravens, 12 playoff appearances in the last 17 seasons, 4 AFC championships, or 4 AFC championship appearances, and 1 Super Bowl win. Seattle, through 2005 through 14, they made the playoffs in 6 of those 9 years. They made the Super Bowl twice, then made the playoffs in 6 of the next 8 years. So he also said this isn't even counting the early 2000 runs by the Tom Brady-led Patriots and the Peyton Manning-led Colts, both which were Super Bowl contenders for over a decade straight, or the Steelers, who make the playoffs every year and have 3 Super Bowl trips since 2005. Also the Green Bay Packers. So when I saw that, I thought, that's a great point, because there's that quote from Dan Campbell that came out last year at the NFC Championship game where he said, I told the guys this might be our only shot. And people took that and ran. That's not him saying, God, guys, this might be it. It's true. It's hard to get back there. The ball bounces. You don't have the guys that you need on your roster. You don't show up with the right game plan. Anything can happen. I mean, look at how good of a season Buffalo had, and they're just where we are right now. But the point being, because of Dan Campbell, because of Brad Holmes, and I feel this with 100% of my heart, the Detroit Lions window is anything but closed. I fully expect the Lions to continue having success. Now, do they win 15 games next year? Probably not. That's 15 to 17 is an astronomical level. That's very, very good. But I don't think the Detroit Lions are going anywhere. I think the window is still wide open.
I would agree. I think the window's wide open. And I guess to all the stats that you just gave, I mean, it clearly shows that it can be done. I think the most important thing to leaving the window wide open and giving yourself an opportunity from season to season, it has to start with right now, and the season that they're approaching right now, which is, the roster is going to change. You're probably going to have 20%, of roster attrition from year to year. You're going to be bringing in some new free agents. You've got to find guys that continue to fit your team. And then it's the draft. I mean, Brad Holmes is now up against a situation where there's not a whole lot of room on this team as far as where these guys are going to be able to play. But we might lose some guys like Malcolm Rodriguez. We might lose, some of the younger, the older draft picks that the Lions had in 2021 or even 2022. It's just the way that it goes. And I think this is the most important season to put us back into the driver's seat for, an opportunity at the postseason again in 2025. It starts right now. And we're going to get into, draft picks, mock drafts, players that maybe we think can affect this team from a free agent perspective this week. So this week is when we're going to start doing some of that. But I definitely agree with, was it Section 344? The window's not closed. It definitely is not. I think that we still have, 2-3 seasons ahead of us where we got plenty of guys that are signed, like the game changers are signed. What happens next with Aiden, we'll see, probably by the end of training camp, whether he gets extended. I think the 5th-year option is going to get picked up here, before May. But guys like Kirby, I mean, these are guys we could lose, right? He might want $20 million a year. That's probably going to be too much. Brian Branch, time for you to go back to safety and step up. And I think that's just the nature of the game, especially if you want to bring in a high price free agent that is an edge rusher, you're probably going to lose Kirby. And that's a fact. And I'm going to be talking about that later on today in a video that'll be coming out this evening. What happens when you want to sign the players that you want to sign? Who do you lose? You're going to lose some big time players.
You have RP in the chat. You're absolutely right. And he says, RP says, we have a really hard schedule next year. And that's something that's, surfacing a lot too. You look at that schedule, it's like the 6 of the 9 games are against playoff teams. And one of the non-playoff teams is the Cincinnati Bengals. On the flip side though, look at the home schedule and it's going to balance out, no doubt about it. It is it's a daunting schedule. It's not going to be easy. It wasn't going to be easy this year. It's never going to be easy in the NFL, but I know that is a talking point for the Lions that schedule next year is going to be, it's going to be brutal. But I think for as difficult as those road games are, there are some easier opponents that should be coming into Ford Field.
So, like Cruzen says, we got to use the cap money. A lot of people are wondering why Brad has left so much money, from year to year. And I thought a lot of people already knew, kind of what's going on, but it's hard to remember from year to year what you have, on the roster and what you don't have. Well, right now the Lions have 54 players signed on the roster. It was just 40 last week. We have 54 signed right now. And we have $46.5 million on the cap. But in 2026, our cap number right now with 31 players on the roster is only $22 million. So when you look at 2026, we're in trouble because, Goff's going to make $69 million that year, right? He made 30 something this year. He's going to make 30 something in 25. But in 2026, it's time to pay your quarterback. And by then, the Lions have a dead cap of 63.8 on Jared Goff. So it's not like they're going to be able to move off of him. I mean, they could if they did it in a trade, but it's not like they're going to. This is the guy that they're going to stick with. So not having but $22 million in 2026, and let's say they add $40 million to that number from the NFL that year. So now we're at $62 million. We still have 20 guys to sign that are going to hit that top 51. That's a ton of money, especially when you look at some of the guys that are not signed to those deals. Like Aiden's not on this list right now. He's not, and so that's going to cost you $25-30 million a year.
Yeah, J-Mo, Brian Branch,
right? Kirby.
Well, no, McNeil they got.
So you're missing 4 or 5 big names off this list in 2026. So we have next to nothing for cap in 2026. So that's why this draft is so important. And that's why I continually will talk and preach about the fact that you don't bring in an edge rusher that costs you $25 million. You just don't, because you won't be able to afford it. And if you go all in for one season, you can forget it, because after that, you're going to lose everybody and you won't be able to retain everybody. It happens all the time. Go look at the teams that do it. Go look at the teams that go all in for a season. What happens? Those players don't stick around. And you spend all that money, and oftentimes they don't even make the Super Bowl, and they don't win.
The team that comes to mind on that most recently, the F them picks, people are going to counter that with, well, the Rams did it and they won. They did. Give them credit. But then you notice a lot of those players left. They couldn't keep them. And I didn't expect the Rams to be a game away from the conference championship this year. Give them credit, but yeah, it's hard to sustain. And then now there's rumors that they're not going to be able to keep Cooper Kupp. Stafford might be done. That might be more age related, but for them, thank goodness they won. Because yeah, if you didn't, then it's financing something that you can't make the payments on. It's not smart.
I'm not going to go deep off in the weeds about the Rams. We can break that down another day, but I will say this. That was a perfect storm.
It was.
Because they already had a team that Brad Holmes helped build.
Yeah.
They already had a team, right? They had cap space. They had draft picks. And they brought in Matthew Stafford. They reworked his deal. They also brought in Von Miller and OBJ that season, who got injured, I believe, in the Super Bowl.
He did.
So they brought in a couple of players, but they didn't really F them picks on an edge rusher. They didn't F them picks on a linebacker. They you know what I'm saying? They brought in a quarterback. Different story.
Yep, great point.
They did not do it in any other position. So yeah, they wanted a different quarterback. They wanted to get off of Jared Goff. And I think that was probably the best deal for both teams, because, we are the team we are now, and they won one, but they've never been back. Von Miller was standing on the sidelines of the Bills last night.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't gone back. I mean, it's just, all things are relative, right? So speaking of picks, speaking of F them picks, Lions are going to build from within. We know that. That's Brad Holmes' mantra. That's just how he does life. That's how he manages a team. This season, we are picking in the draft at 28th overall in the first round, 60th overall in the second round. We added a third round compensatory pick for Aaron Glenn that we did not have before. It's projected to be at 101. So damn near the top 100. We have 3 picks already. In the 4th round, it's yet to be determined because we received that pick. I can't remember about what team, but I believe it matters on how the rest of these shake out this weekend. So 6th round pick from the Bucks. That one's still yet to be determined. We received that in the Carlton Davis trade. And then the 7th round from the Cowboys. That one's yet to be determined. That was received in 2024 for the trade with Terry and Arnold. And then we have a 7th round pick that is yet to be determined as well. So we have all picks, right? 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 2 7ths. We just don't have a 5th right now. If I'm Brad Holmes, I'm sorry. I'm getting rid of every 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick that I have for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And I'm going to move up as much as I can in these drafts. And I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it the rest of my life. I would much rather get rid of the draft picks for better draft picks, not for a player. I'd much rather give up, a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th to move up from 60 overall in the 2nd to 33. I know it sounds like a lot of capital, but the player that you're going to get, at the top of the 2nd round is going to be a much better pick than you're going to get, in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round. Or better yet, try to sneak into the back end of the 1st round so that now you got a 5th-year option on that guy. I would much rather be loaded at pick 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 so that I can have more 5th-round options on my guys. Because 4 years sometimes just isn't long enough. And if they get injured in year 1 or year 2, well, maybe you need that 5th-round pick or that 5th-round option. Kind of happened with J-Mo, right? I mean, it took him a minute to get his shit together, both physically and mentally. And thankfully, we have a 5th-year option on him. Would he have slipped out of the 1st round? I don't know. Not sure. So with the picks that we have, Riley, I still have confidence. I mean, I still think that, we're right where we were the last couple of seasons. And we still were able to bring in some amazing players. Now, this last year's draft, I mean, we picked up some good players, yeah. But I still would have to say that what we did in the middle rounds, I'm glad we got Vaki. I'm glad that we have a project in Manu. I mean, Mahogany was probably the steal of the draft for me. But I think that Brad has to be a little bit more aggressive in the earlier rounds. I think that he has to go out and he's not a position picker, right? He's not a hole picker in the draft. He's the best player available. And I hope that this year he blends a little bit more to the other side where we really need an edge rusher. We've got to get an edge rusher early. We really need an outside linebacker. We've got to get an outside linebacker early. We're going to need a tackle that can come in and play now. If Manu has not graduated to the next level of his development, go get a tackle. So those are the things that I hope Brad changes a little bit this year, but I still trust whatever he does. Your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I think it's perfectly said because now, in 2021, 2022, those first, second draft for Brad Holmes, it was great having as many picks as we can, as many swings at of the bat as we could get, but there's less room. So I remember, with the draft where we get Gibbs and Laporta and Branch, you're not going to have as good of a draft the next year because there's not as many holes to fill. And I'm right there with you as far as there's less room for developmental projects at this point. Kind of going inside with the championship window. I'm with you. Be aggressive. It'd be better to have 4 players that make a difference than 7 with 3 of them maybe making a difference in 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah. So let's see here. Thomas Donner says we must bench Glasgow. That's not going to happen. We just paid him. He could be a backup, sure. Dump Martin, I think that would be a bad choice. I mean, we don't have a Lee McNeil. And we don't have a Lee McNeil probably until November or later, or even at all in 25, possibly. So I would say that Broderick Martin, we're going to find out in his 3rd season who he is. He's going to go off this offseason and transform his body once again. We definitely need to get defensive linemen again because we have to back up Aleem, and DJ Reader's only signed through one more year. But see, this is where I have a problem with some Lions fans that just can't separate Saturdays from Sundays. Just saying that we need defensive linemen from University of Michigan, that's not a great answer. It's not. We need to get the best players available regardless of school. Matter of fact, for me, if I'm putting players up on a board, I'm not putting what school they're attached to. I'm putting up the name and the position. That's it. I don't care where they've been to school. I need to see what they've done on tape. I need to see what their stat lines are, what their measurables are, what their combine is. Remove the name from the school. Because I think that there is a stigma attached to, you know, at least for some fans, that they need to have all their players from their favorite team. That is probably the worst way to pick draft picks in a draft. And I can't even say that I've ever seen a GM pick that way, to be honest with you. Of course, I wouldn't know because we don't know. I guess I don't see a bunch of players getting picked from East Carolina State. You know what I mean? Or North Carolina State. My apology. North Carolina State. So I'd remove the team name from a player's uniform, you know?
Can they play? Right. I mean, we've gotten a lot of Bama guys. He's gone to Iowa a few times. But yeah, it's can they play and do they fit? And the thing is as you get a good team, it starts to go into best player available, but then you also have specific needs, just less room for projects. You're absolutely right. Good thing is Brad Holmes has a history of hitting on draft picks, but the Lions, go figure, they got to get this draft right this year. They just have to get it right so we can get back to defending the NFC North again next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's our picks for this year. I can't wait to see what Brad Holmes does. We're going to be talking more about it this week. So the breaking news from this morning, yesterday, is Calvin Shepard and John Morton. So John Morton has been mentioned as a potential Lions offensive coordinator favorite right now. He was with the Lions in, you said 2022 was the year, I believe. And Campbell speaks highly of him. He believes that he even helped Tanner Engstrand. So I guess give me your thoughts, on John Morton right now. It's kind of hard to not say Johnny Morton because I keep thinking of Johnny Morton every time I see this name. But give me your thoughts on John Morton and what you feel, could or could not be, a good fit for Detroit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do kind of go with the Johnny, but it was because I read a quote from Dan Campbell where he called him Johnny. So Dan Campbell said, speaking of John Morton, said, John Morton, man, Johnny's a superstar now. And there's a number of things that he did for us last year that are things that we've kept now, last year being 2022. And I really feel like that he helped Tanner as well. And he took a lot of that and he learned from that and he's grown from that. So he went to Denver as the passing game coordinator. And then, yesterday we heard his was the first name from an outside source that I've heard as being in the mix for potential offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions.
Well, let me bring in a report here by, this is Mr. Jeff Risden. Says reports indicate that the Lions have a leading candidate for the offensive coordinator position. This was written last night, about almost 10 p.m. last night. So he says the Detroit Lions have yet to replace Ben Johnson as the team's offensive coordinator, but Johnson left to become the head coach of the Chicago Bears and took wide receiver coach Antoine Randall L., one of the top internal candidates, with him, which I'm still pissed about. I still can't believe Antoine Randall L. is a defector. Now, while nothing is certain yet, it appears a clubhouse leader has emerged as the new Lions offensive coordinator. Broncos passing game coordinator John Morton has been talked about as a candidate, but those talks escalated on Sunday with a report from Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network, where Ian Rappaport says Broncos pass game coordinator John Morton has emerged as the candidate to watch the Lions offensive coordinator. Per me and Tom Pelissero. I don't know why he puts that in his tweets. Like that is the most foolish thing I've ever seen. He recently interviewed with Dan Campbell and was on the Detroit staff a few years ago. Now, Morton has been an offensive assistant for several NFL seasons and was the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. Morton spent the 2022 season as a senior offensive assistant under Dan Campbell with the Detroit Lions. Now, he's 55 years old. He is a Detroit area native. He also played collegiately at Western Michigan. So John Morton has ties to Michigan, state of Michigan. He has ties to the Detroit area. Now, a little history on John Morton. He was born September 24, 1969 in Auburn Hills. He is a seasoned football coach, obviously with a very rich trajectory throughout his career, spanning over 2 decades in both college and professional football. He played college football at Western, what I just mentioned. He was a wide receiver one at that. His professional playing career included stints with the Canadian Football League, Toronto Argonauts, as well as practice squads in the NFL for the Oakland Raiders and the Green Bay Packers. Morton's coaching career began with the Oakland Raiders in 1998, where he served in various capacities, including offensive assistant, wide receivers coach. Now, during his tenure with the 2002 Raiders, the team reached the Super Bowl, and Morton continued his career with notable positions, including tight ends coach for the Raiders, pass game coach, and wide receivers coach at USC, and wide receivers coach for the New Orleans Saints and San Francisco 49ers. Now, his trajectory throughout the NFL includes roles with the New York Jets as an offensive coordinator before joining the Detroit Lions as a senior offensive assistant in 2022, and he subsequently moved to the Denver Broncos, where he currently is and serves as the pass game coordinator since 2023. Obviously, we know that there's some linkage here between the Broncos, right, with Sean Payton and Dan Campbell, and obviously there's some linkage here between John Morton and Dan Campbell and, previous history together in Detroit. So, is his history as a passing game coordinator, is it making him a strong candidate for the Lions? Is his history as a previous offensive coordinator with the Jets making him a strong candidate for the Lions? Or is it the relationship between himself and Dan Campbell that is making more of this, prominent leader at the offensive coordinator position? I'll give you my 2 cents on this. His philosophy, right? His philosophy is, or I guess the philosophy for him becoming the offensive coordinator, one, it would be a return to Detroit. It brings continuity back to the team, familiarity with the team, familiarity with Dan Campbell, and a lot of the other, players that are already on the coaching staff. And given his prior working relationship with Dan Campbell, I think that is the understanding, or at least the takeaway for me of this offensive philosophy that he may already have. And it stems from the relationship of who Dan Campbell is and what we were already doing at that time. Now, he has an extensive background with multiple NFL teams, colleges, different, positions. He worked under coaches like Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, John Gruden. So he has the innovative play calling ability, right? I think there's a lot to be said here. He has the skills. You couple that with his deep-rooted ties to Michigan as a native, obviously as, a former player of the game of football at Western Michigan. I think that this is a great option for the Lions, but something still tells me we might see 2 guys come up from inside the halls of Allen Park. We still might see Scotty Montgomery become the offensive coordinator. I'm wondering if they're doing the interviews just to kind of do the interviews because they have to. They don't really have to, but you know what I mean. What do you think, Riley? Do you think that this makes a good coach, good offensive coordinator opportunity for the Lions? I mean, I guess I like where he's been, and what he's been doing in his history and his experience, and he's been doing it for a long time. Mm-hmm. But why hasn't he been an offensive coordinator for all these other years that he's been in the NFL is my only question.
It's a great question. And RP in the chat threw that same kind of question out. He says, is Tanner not ready if Tanner was the guy that they were looking at? And then he asks, will Dan Campbell actually be the play caller? And then you're just bringing in somebody that's got familiarity with the system, because Campbell's really going to be the one calling the play. And then, as you mentioned on that did they interview anybody else for defensive coordinator, or was it because from what I understood, it was just kind of announced Shepard was the guy?
No, they interviewed Larry Foote, but we don't know everybody else that they've interviewed either. I mean, Larry Foote was the only one that was announced. They could have interviewed everybody inside Allen Park, internally. Externally was Larry Foote.
Right. And then maybe that's like you're saying, are they doing this just to have some names out there as an external candidate? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's. Do you think Dan Campbell is going to be calling the plays? I guess it depends on who they hire, right? But
I think that Dan has his fingerprints all over the offense. I think he's always had his fingerprints all over the offense. And I don't think that that's going to go away. I don't know that he wants to call plays and take his attention away from everything else that's going on. When you're calling plays on the offense, I think that there's a drawback here where if you're calling the play and something doesn't execute right, something happens that shouldn't have happened, well, who's going to talk to the guys when they come back to the bench? It can't be Dan.
Great point.
Because he's now on the sideline coaching the rest of the game. So your guy that you've got pegged to be this puppet, he's going to have to go talk to the guys. Okay, so if he communicates something to the puppet, OC, and he goes and miscommunicates it to the rest of the offense, then what? I think it's dicey to do that. I mean, I see that, Sean McVay has success with it. Or is he? Is he having success with it? Would he be better? Would that team be better if he wasn't calling plays?
Yep. Be interesting in Chicago because Ben Johnson's already come out and they asked him at his press conference, will you be calling plays? He said unequivocally, I will be calling the plays.
So I think that is going to be a huge mistake. I think that when you have a rookie head coach in the NFL, you better hire the best offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator that you can get your hands on.
They hired a 28-year-old offensive coordinator yesterday.
A puppet. That's what they hired. They hired a puppet. I think it is the stupidest thing in the world, but you know what? Let him prove me wrong. I'll eat crow any day of the week. I like mine with a little bit of barbecue sauce. I think it's stupid. I really do. I think that they need to define their role and be a head coach, and that's it. Like, you got guys in plays, or in play to do things for a reason. I think it takes your attention away from the game. I'd rather be in a position to be able to coach everything. If I wanted to call a play, all I got to do is hit my button and say, hey, Ben, call this play. This is what I want to see right now. Whole season, I'm like, all right, cool. I mean, that's how simple it needs to be.
Right.
But anyway, we'll see what happens. John Morton, I mean, I think that there's some good opportunity here for the Lions. Obviously, relationships are everything. And I think, bringing in a little bit of an elder statesman that's been around the league for a while, someone that has been under Sean Payton now, and part of the passing game coordinator position with Sean Payton, I think that does bring a wealth of experience to the Lions team with what we want to continue to do, right? Which is maintain the focus on Jared Goff and what we're able to do. So there's probably some symmetry here. Obviously, when you look at what John Morton does with Sean Payton and how prolific that offense has been this season, I mean, just another 1 year turnaround for Sean Payton and that Broncos team has been tremendous. I mean, yeah, you can poach a guy like John Morton back over. It could lead to just another exciting wrinkle to this offense. But I think that without a doubt, Jared Goff's going to be heavily involved in the playbook that they put together. So will Dan Campbell. I think he'll be heavily involved from that standpoint. And then from there, it's just developing what's going to work best from week to week, game to game. And look, I'm sure that John Morton can do all that. Be interesting to see what it develops into. So lastly, let's talk about Kelvin Shepard for a moment. Now, you obviously heard the news of Kelvin Shepard this weekend. What was your immediate knee-jerk reaction to Shepard?
My immediate reaction was, why didn't I see this coming? It's kind of like you calling out the defensive game plan that they should have used against Washington. It's like, it's so obvious when you see it in retrospect. They kind of groomed Shepard. He was the guy all the way. I think, even during the season, there was, in fact, Aaron Glenn says he's been there from the beginning. He knows exactly how I think. This is Aaron Glenn speaking on Kelvin Shepard. He knows exactly how I think. Exactly. And that's a guy that I've actually been mentoring to be in the DC role at some point. I think he's damn near close, if not there, to be ready to do that. He's a damn good coach. He's fiery. Everything that you need as a linebacker coach, he's that. And there are certain coaches on this staff that I think have to be bulldogs, and he's one of those coaches at that position. And that was from an article written by Corey Woods on December 12th, so just a month and a half ago. Kelvin Shepherd, with the culture that's been built, you want as much of this internal. I feel like it's okay to have some external influence, but I think it's a great move. He's young. Everything that I just read that Aaron Glenn said about him, I think it's the right move. They can continue building and continue having the strength of the team, or one of the strengths, be the defensive unit for the Lions.
So quick question I'll answer here. Scott Young wanted to know when McNeil was going to be healthy. So honestly, we don't know. I mean, if you look at where he was injured, right? You're talking November, 12 months, right? That type of injury is 12 months. Doesn't mean that he won't be able to hit the field, this summer and start to kind of get back. Obviously, that's when he's going to be doing his rehab. But it might take 3, 4, 5 months for him to build the strength back. I mean, you're talking defensive lineman. It's not like same thing for Aiden Hutchinson. That's why I did not expect for him to even come back in a Super Bowl situation or in the playoffs. It's going to take a lot to turn that leg back into all muscle the way that it was. I mean, it was skinny, right? Aleem's going to have to put on a lot of weight, and I feel like this is going to be potentially, full 12 months. If there's an option for him to get back this summer, I think that would be phenomenal, but I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. If I were a coach, I'd be bringing somebody in no matter what. And I hope that we're not as stubborn that way because they've done it with Emmanuel Mosley. They're stubborn in thinking that, he'll get back, he'll be able to play. And then, you don't put him on IR, then he comes back and he tears his other one. And then he comes back the next season and he's just on, injury all season. It was a wasted spot. Aleem will never be a wasted spot. But what I'm saying is, let's get somebody in. No matter what the case may be, it's never a bad thing to have really good defensive tackles on your team. And if it just so happens that one of them has to go back to a rotational role, or you work Aleem in as a rotational role and for the rest of the season, that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. And if Broderick Martin doesn't develop the way that he's supposed to develop, well, you better have somebody in place. So I would approach it from this way. Aleem is out in 2025 until he's not. That's the way I would approach it. And I would go after getting a defensive tackle.
That's going to be tough for a lot of people to accept because Aleem just got that huge contract. But I think you're absolutely right. You can't disagree with that. You can't realistically, anything you get from him is just kind of a cherry on top, or it needs to be viewed through that lens at least. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, when you look at Aleem being back or not, and the giant contract that he just got. I mean, that's again why roster roulette, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense. You just paid Aleem. Same thing applies to Aiden Hutchinson. You just paid Aleem. Now you have to go get that next defensive tackle in the draft. Even if you got him in the first round and you're paying the guy, $18 million over 4 seasons or 5 seasons, that is a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to pay in free agency for another, DJ Reader type player. I mean, he's $15 million a year, and that was a discount, right? Or $10 million or whatever. He was somewhere between 10 and 15. That was a discount. So for us to go out and get another guy in free agency wouldn't really make a ton of sense unless it's a depth tier 2 guy. Clip that, right? Depth tier 2 guy is what I'm expecting. You grab another high draft pick for your defensive line, whether it's edge or defensive tackle. Tier 2 guy, edge, or defensive tackle in the draft. You double down on both those positions. You secure that defensive line. You've got your depth taken care of. You've got your next guy in line taken care of. And then the same thing with linebacker. You're going to have to get a tier 2 guy and another guy in the draft. And then you're set at all 3 positions. And then you're going to need to do something about Carlton Davis, whether he comes back or not. You may have left enough fruit on the tree, the old dollar tree, to be able to bring back Carlton Davis. So, yeah. Anyway, Kelvin Shepherd for me. I love getting off topic. It doesn't always go well.
I think it's great, man.
Kelvin Shepherd for me. Look, I think that there's some really great qualities of a defensive coordinator. And I think the number one thing that a lot of you in the chat have already hit on this morning. is that when I can't remember who said it. They said they went back and watched some of the hard knocks. Shep has the command of this defense. He has their respect. And I think that's the most important thing. And this is something that I would add if I was a general manager or head coach, right? And at the end of my season, I know that I'm losing my coordinators. I'm bringing the guys in for their exit interview on Monday. And I'm going to have a little piece of paper with a pencil in front of every player. And it's going to have a couple of boxes. Hey, if we were going to have an internal defensive coordinator added to this team, choose one. Shepard, Williams, Townsend. Who's your favorite? No one's ever going to know, right? I don't want to know. You just fill it out and you go drop it in a box. Don't put your name on it. So nobody knows what you voted. And no one will ever know because it's not going to be made public. And then as a coach or a GM, you'll at least know who has the respect of the team. I think that's the first step you take. Now, you can put some weight to it or not. Doesn't matter. Maybe it gives you an idea of where to at least put more of your resources into hiring that individual or letting that individual go, right? So for me with Calvin, defensive coordinator, you've got to have these qualities. You got to be strategic in nature, right? Scheme versatility. You have to be, you have to have the ability to adapt the schemes to different personnel and the opponent strengths and weaknesses. And the reason why this is number one for me is I feel like as good as Aaron Glenn was, this was probably his worst department. He shined in week 18, but over the last 2-3 seasons, he wasn't as scheme versatile. You know, he was more risk averse, right? He was too risky at times. I don't think that he always played to the opponent's weaknesses. I feel like he wanted to play to what he thought his defensive strengths were. And that's not a bad thing, but if you're thinking that your team is strong with missing 21 players to IR, you're in a whole different reality that doesn't exist. Play calling creativity falls right in line with that. I think that designing an innovative, playbook that has to be effective, right? You have to have effective plays to disrupt the opposing offense. Doesn't mean that you have to blitz all the time. I feel like that was his go-to, was blitz, 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 blitz. Like sometimes blitz hurts. It hurts you more than it helps you. Again, game planning. You have to be a really good game planner. So game planning excellence has to be at the top of the list. Through preparation, obviously, for each opponent, identifying tendencies and exploiting weaknesses. It's the tendencies that right there I would put that word pattern. The pattern and the tendencies of your opponent should stick out like a sore thumb. But if you know that, your opponent should know that. But sometimes you're blinded by your own deficiencies, right? You may be an offense that's playing well, but you don't see your own deficiencies. But that DC is going to see it. And he's going to exploit it. And that's why you lost a game that everyone's shaking their head at, like, how did we just lose this game? How did they just do that to us? How did they shut us down? We saw it a couple of times throughout the season that we had some difficulty with defenses. Leadership and communication. I don't think that this is a bad one for Shep. I think that this is probably the biggest thing that he has riding for him. I think that he's a hell of a leader, and he definitely has that gravelly, loud, forceful voice. When I heard him at training camp, I mean, he's in it, and he loses his voice like daily, it seems like, because he's in there communicating. Motivational skills, he's got to be motivational, right? He's got to be a guy that can inspire these players to play with maximum effort and intensity. He has to be clear in his communication. He has to be effectively conveying complex schemes and adjustments to players, but he has to be able to do it on the fly. Player development, this is another big one. I think that all coaches, fostering growth and improvement in individual players is a tactical mastery, in my opinion. You have to master that. But even more so in tactical mastery is personnel grouping, utilizing the right players in the right situations. Completely failed in the last game. Wasn't his fault. Blitz design, crafting effective blitzes to pressure a quarterback, but when and are the right times to do that. Coverage schemes, implementing sound coverage concepts to limit big plays. and adaptability. In-game adjustments. He has to be able to quickly recognize and respond to the adjustments needed. He has to be savvy with technology. I don't even think I need to mention that one. Film study, analytics. I think that goes hand in hand with the job. Has to be a good problem solver, finding solutions to in-game challenges, overcome the adversity. And then obviously adversity, right? This team has been built upon resilience. He has to be the forefront of adversity and understanding that what this team is up against week to week to week, the players that we lose, to injury, hopefully we don't 25, but it more than likely is going to happen. How is he going to handle that adversity? Is he going to be stubborn, or is he going to go back to the beginning of what I'm talking about and find the tendencies and exploit the weaknesses and utilize the team that he has to the best of his ability with being strategic? So I think that Shepard can fit all these things. To your point, he's been groomed by Dan Campbell. He's been groomed by Aaron Glenn. He's had some phenomenal pieces around him. I think that Williams was another instrumental piece this season that I think that he's probably learned a few things from. And now it's taking all of these different identities and putting it all into one body of Calvin Shepard. How are you going to use everything you just learned this season? So any comments on any of that?
I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to follow up with what you say, because I think that you just painted a perfect picture. If you just list those qualities that you want your defensive coordinator to have, or offensive coordinator, or leaders, your coaches, right? It's not hard to see Kelvin Shepard having all of those qualities. And then Bob, I think it was Bob W, made a comment earlier in here just saying, again, you want that internal promotion because it gives people confidence that if you perform well, you will be rewarded. No different than the players. I'm excited about Shepard being hired. It's weird for me starting to see a lot of these coaches that are younger than me. Shepard's not too much older than I am. But like I saw yesterday, the Bears get that offensive coordinator that's, like you said, though, it's a puppet, right? But I don't think Kelvin Shepard's going to be a puppet. I think he's going to have his own voice, which is what you want. You want a guy that's, continues what's already been started, but can adjust it and have it be his own project, his own responsibility that he oversees. I think Kelvin Shepard was the right hire. It makes sense to me. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. Big shout out to Swink219. By the way, I enjoyed your comments over the weekend. Very impactful comments. Really appreciated it. Look, we're going to head into the off season with the ability to just kind of compartmentalize everything, right? And try to bring you guys the best content we can. It's going to be a lot of stuff that, is going to get more technical now that, it's like I'm big into the stats, right? I'm going to go in and dig for things that, we don't normally talk about throughout the season because we're worried about what's next, the next game, and trying to get through as much as we can in a week, which you would think it's a long time. It's not. It's not a lot of time to prepare. There's not enough time in the day to prepare. And, I got to say thank you again to all the writers, everybody out there that's doing this each and every day. I wouldn't be able to do or provide a show without all of their hard work. So for all of the writers out there that we've utilized this season, the Jeremy Reismans, the Jeff Risdens, the John Macaroons, the Mike Paytons, Colton Pouncey. I'm not going to say thank you to Mike Florio. To anybody out there, right? That any of the information that we've used, all the good work that they put in, all the energy that they put in, the Tim 20man especially, and there's many others. And I don't mean to not mention you this morning. There's a ton. Justin, another big one. So Justin Rogers, there's a lot of guys, a lot of men and women that put a lot of hours into what they do, and that's why they're the best at what they do. And we're just trying to be the best at what we do. So I would appreciate it if you're new this morning, if you're just now watching, or if you're watching later on, please subscribe. Help us get to our goal this year of 10K. I'm way ahead of where I want it to be at this moment. I mean, it's barely 16 months into doing this on YouTube. We're way ahead of where we expected to be. And it's been because of this amazing community of Lions fans, football fans. I mean, there's other fans of different NFL teams that are in here each and every day, and we appreciate all of you. So as you know, the new deal is every 250 subscribers, we're going to give away a signed mini helmet between it's either Chris Spielman or Penei Sewell. By the way, Chris Spielman's staying, so Chris has decided to stay in Detroit. That's the other big news this weekend, is that Chris Spielman's staying home. I think that's great. So anyway, if you're new, like, share, subscribe. Of course, be a part of this journey as we go forward. You're going to get good quality, wholesome, tactful, energetic content from us, without all the narratives, right? Without all the need to be anything but who we are, right? I don't really try to do this for entertainment. I try to do it because it started as a way to, do therapy, right? I mean, going through cancer and having an opportunity to get on a mic and I mean, I was talking like I was chewing glass in the very beginning, and it's come a long way. So we're just trying to help others through the Cancer Foundation, Rock Down Cancer Foundation, and we're just trying to get better each and every day. But this started out as, a Lions season ticket holder for 25 plus years, 60 plus years of my family following this team. It only seemed right. And that's why I continue to do this. And without you guys, I wouldn't do it. So if you're new, subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Riley, what is your final 30 of the day?
Man, I love this channel so much. I say it every time, but Swink, you didn't read his comment, but yeah, he said you should be a coach for the Lions. You're very knowledgeable into your football. This is a great place to be if you're looking for the truth, the honesty, and the transparency for our beloved Detroit Lions. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us this morning, and I echo my sentiment with everybody else, saying that you rock, and we appreciate you, Will. Thank you, guys.
Well, I appreciate all you guys. I don't think I could ever be a coach in the NFL. I'm not that good. There's no way. I see the tendencies because I can sit back and do this, but honestly, to do what they do every single day, that takes a special human. I think it takes someone that's played the game at a high level. We can all sit back in this chair and say stuff, right? But that's because I'm in this chair. You go put yourself in these high energy. I mean, you got to understand the level of cortisol these guys need to have. Like, it is so much stress. And I don't know if I could ever put my body through that. I mean, I've been through enough. It takes a special individual. I really respect the hell out of every coach, that's done this, and the GMs and the players, of course. Like, they've got a hard job, man. They really do. There's a reason why there's so few of them. So anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one. You guys take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Actually, we'll probably see you back tonight with a few videos. But that's it for Rise and Grind Morning Show. Take care.
Shout, tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. These blades kick, we feel alive. Echoes in the city as the fans arrive. The heart of the motor in the screen. We're bound together by a football dream. Rise and grind, Detroit is calling out. Football dreams in every shout. Tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. Hey, feel the unity, the tribe's electrified.